what? It is me, MT, and welcome back to the Heavy Spoiler Show, y'all. This is about to be a breakdown for episode 6 of Agatha All Along, so let's just get into this thing. Familiar by Thy Side is the name of the 6th episode of Agatha All Along, and it starts with the magic mitzvah of William Kaplan, the original name of Wiccan in the comics, before he realized that he was actually the son of Wanda Maximoff. Billy wears a blue yarmulke, pointing to the blue theme of Wiccan's powers, as well as comic book Wiccan's blue headband. Billy Kaplan is then led into the ceremony by his biological parents, Rebecca and Jeff Kaplan.
Oh snap! Those are the Kaplan people from the anime and the show. The one that they do in the comic books, remember? Kaplan, those guys. If you didn't read it, it's basically, what do you do? Oh yeah, okay, so what's going on right now? This is episode 6 or 5? 6. I want to say 6. 6. Okay, I saw it on the little thing up there. Okay, so currently in this episode, this is talking about Wiccan, basically Wanda's son, but at the same time, it's a guy named Billy Kaplan, and basically Billy Kaplan, he passed away, and Wanda's son got into his body, and then he's finding out some stuff. Let's see.
And no, I'm not talking about the Jeff Kaplan that made a terrible Overwatch
Oh my gosh, that's an old reference.
sequel, but instead a new, less nerdy strain of Jeff Kaplan, played by actor Paul Edelstein.
Oh my gosh, so they're both named Jeff Kaplan. That's so sad.
Wife Rebecca, of course, being played by actress Maria Dizia. And after the main ceremony, Billy and his loved ones get to partying, with the entire function being themed blue, much like Billy's future powers. And taking a break from dancing, Billy heads on over to the psychic's tent to get his palms read, only for Billy to run into Lilia Calderoo herself, apparently meeting her already in the past as Billy Kaplan before meeting her again 3 years later. And while reading Billy's palm, the lights begin to flicker, and within Lilia's crystal ball, we can actually see a future Billy wearing the blue hoodie that we saw him wearing when he first met Agatha. This is before Lilia mentions that his lifeline is broken in two, pointing to how Billy has 2 different lives with 2 different sets of parents. And a little bit after this, Lilia says the words, "the Tower reversed," which is of course a reference to the Tower tarot card, but in the reverse position. A card formation that represents an imminent crisis and change on the horizon. Lilia's way of foreseeing Billy's car accident to come. And as Billy starts to leave Lilia's tent, he mentions that her vibe is early Argento, a reference to Italian filmmaker Dario Argento, who made horror classics like 1975's Deep Red and 1977's Suspiria. But before Billy leaves, Lilia grabs his arm and tells him that he's a good kid and that he should enjoy every minute of the present moment that he can. Likely Lilia's way of trying to maximize the last few moments of Billy Kaplan's happiness before his life would very soon end. Billy leaves Lilia's tent, but forgets his jacket. But the second that he does leave, we can see Lilia's mental state shift, prompting Lilia to draw a symbol on one of her tiles and slip that tile into Billy's jacket pocket, almost like she's on auto.
Oh my gosh, that's so scary. Come on, we gotta skip.
Pilot or something. We would of course learn later on in the episode from Billy that this marking is a sigil, and it seems to be the very same sigil symbol that appeared over Billy's mouth when he tried to tell the witches his name in episode 2. And while I am completely surprised that it was Lilia herself
What? That looks crazy.
who threw this spell onto Billy, I am still wondering if it was actually Lilia who wanted to do this before immediately forgetting, or if Lilia's mind was briefly taken over by the Scarlet Witch herself in order to prepare a body for her son Billy. Who knows? At any rate, Lilia's mind would quickly snap back to the present right after this, completely forgetting what she even did. However, soon after this, the entire bar mitzvah celebrations would be cut short, courtesy of something fishy happening with the Westview Hex, revealing that Billy Kaplan's bar mitzvah occurred during the events of WandaVision 3 years prior to this show, which would of course make Billy Kaplan 13 years old. I mean, Billy did tell Alice Gulliver that a lot happened to him when he was 13 in episode 3 after all, so now we know what he was talking about. And as the Kaplan family drive back home to their place in Eastview, the family car starts playing audio of Vision and Wanda's conversation from WandaVision episode 2, when Vision says, "My wife and her flying saucers," and Wanda says, "My husband and his indestructible head." I truly love this detail a whole lot, because it is perfectly in line with the chaos magic science that Darcy Lewis discovered in WandaVision Episode 4. In that episode, Darcy detects an extremely high level of cosmic microwave background radiation being emitted from the Hex, radiation that can be traced all the way back to the Big Bang. We would soon discover that this Big Bang radiation is, of course, Wanda Maximoff's chaos energy, and also how that energy was emitting radio waves that were broadcasting the happenings of Wanda Maximoff's life in the Hex, with these radio waves only being picked up by old vintage TVs and AM/FM radios. So them hearing Wanda and Vision arguing tells us that not only is the Kaplan family within pretty damn close vicinity of the Hex, but also that Wanda's chaos energy was also invisibly permeating the car as they drove. That second part is super important because it might just serve to explain how Hex Billy Maximoff's mind and personality transferred into the body of Billy Kaplan. Because much like how the Kaplan car radio picked up the WandaVision
That has to be freaking scary, bro. Like, being in an accident. I don't know. I don't like being in accidents. That sounds scary. Just an accident like that where you're bleeding.
X frequency,
No.
Billy Kaplan's brain could have picked up the Hex Billy Maximoff frequency. Because you gotta remember that Hex Billy Maximoff, along with Hex Vision, Hex Tommy, and all the things that Wanda manipulated in Westview were all just cosmic infinity energy made real. All they really were a mixture of red chaos energy and yellow Mind Stone energy due to the fact that Wanda Maximoff absorbed a shit ton of the Mind Stone's energies in Wakanda during the events of Avengers Infinity War. Before Wanda absorbed these Mind Stone energies, she did not have the ability to create sentient beings in warp.
That's what I'm talking about. She making the sending in BB-beans.
Reality like this, because all she had was chaos energy. It was only when the Scarlet Witch began to forge her own powerful self by first absorbing the mind of Kaplan's body.
Hold up. We gotta go check. Where the heck? Was it right up here or no? Where we going? Where we at? Oh, okay.
Which began to
look. That's having a house in 2025, bro. So crazy and ridiculous.
Forge her own powerful self and first
I can't even speak up, bro. So sorry.
She gained the power to use that mind energy to create independently thinking people and to manipulate matter on a quantum level. If Wanda's hybrid chaos Mind Stone energies were permeating this immediate area outside of the Hex, then as soon as Hex Billy Maximoff turned back into pure chaos and mind energy as the Hex began to disappear.
That's how fast I disappear in people's lives.
Here, Billy's Mind Stone energies could easily...
That's me looking at the girl that I like, but she don't like me. Or the goth girl.
find its way into Billy Kaplan's body. But only at the exact moment Billy Kaplan's own nervous system stopped producing its own bioelectricity to pump his own heart at the moment of his death. Because that is when the bioelectricity of Hex Billy's Mind Stone energies could ride Wanda's chaos magic radio energy waves into Billy Kaplan's body. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. After Billy's dad turns off the radio, Billy is immediately greeted by the sight of the Hex, a Hex that appears to be slowly shrinking, pointing to this being near the end of Wanda's hold over Westview right before she says goodbye to her family. And during this ride, a truck coming from the opposite direction.
Damn, bro. How messed up you have to be to crash, like, bro, come on, man.
Suddenly swerves into their lane, causing Billy's mother to drastically swerve out of the way onto the side of the road, causing the car to lose control and slam into a nearby tree in the forest. This appears to be the very same mysterious car crash outside of Eastview referenced in the very first episode when Agatha and Rio are chatting about their case over a pizza and a beer. A car wreck that apparently deployed the front two airbags and left a trace of blood in the back seat. Now we know that this backseat blood belongs to Billy, who was sitting in the back seat at the time of the crash. Seeing Billy in super rough shape, his parents then run to get help as Billy Kaplan's heart takes its final beats before Billy passes away. But pretty much the second Billy Kaplan's body becomes vacant, in comes the cosmic energies of Billy Maximoff to move on in. Much like Billy Maximoff's father Vision did in
Behold, Jimmy John's new smoked cheddar burger.
Oh my gosh, that looks so good. But dang, bro, they're about to say,
Taste.
come on.
Premium roasted meats. Exquisite.
Let's do
the
this.
WandaVision finale when he too saved a piece of himself into another body, the body of White Vision. It's literally the exact same science done in different ways. Because at the end of the day, the human mind and nervous system is just as much of a computer as, White Vision's brain is. When Billy Maximoff awakens in this new body, he immediately yells out the name of his Hex brother Tommy, hinting that Tommy was likely the last word Billy Maximoff uttered before he was erased by the collapse of the Hex, which is quite sad. Shortly after this, though, Mr. and Mrs. K return to the crash scene with help in the form of police officer Alice Wu Gulliver, the second member of Agatha's coven that apparently ran into Billy in the past, underscoring what was established earlier in the season about how covens are usually formed by fate, pulling these members together. And after passing out again, Billy then wakes up in the Eastview Hospital with no memory of his prior life as Billy Kaplan. Again, likely due to the mind energies that made up Billy Kaplan's personality dying in the car with his last heartbeat. There's no Kaplan in there no more. And boy, can Jeff and Rebecca Kaplan see this right off the bat, because Billy is not acting like his usual self anymore. And Billy is of course able to detect their worry through the manifestation of...
Whoa, that's freaking crazy, bro. That's crazy. Picturing being like, oh my gosh, that's so sad, but crazy.
his latent mind-reading abilities, a magic ability that Billy shares in common with his mother Wanda. And after all of this mind-reading becomes too much for Billy, Billy retreats to his new old bedroom. A bedroom with posters of Alice in Wonderland, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and The Black Cauldron on the walls. And these posters are not far from this poster for a fictional movie called The Goofballs, a clear parody of the 1985 classic The Goonies. And in addition to some Harry Houdini posters that point to Kaplan's love for the famous illusionist, we can see some figurines of the Wicked Witch of the West, the Scarecrow, and Dorothy. Yet another way this series shouts out The Wizard of Oz. And over here we can see a witch poster with the text, Miss Baldwin, a modern witch of Endor. And on the poster we can see a woman in a yellow dress looking back at a skeleton behind her. An image reminiscent to Lily Calderou's vision from episode 3 of that woman in the yellow dress with that robed skeleton. Then we are brought forward 3 years into the future when a 16-year-old Billy tells his boyfriend Eddie about how he feels like he died and came back to life on the day of the crash, leading the two to head to Billy's room to look over his own research into who he could possibly...
Hold up. So, Billy was like probably 11 or something in this show, right? And he was a little kid. And then, did you already know that he was gay? That's the right terminology. Do you already know that he likes men? At that age? But I don't know. That's crazy. That's weird.
On 16-year-old Billy's walls, we can see posters for the 1976 movie Carrie, the 1996 movie The Craft, and the 2004 horror movie Saw. And not far from those, we can also see a trans right flag in the background showing that your boy is an ally. And as Billy talks about the Westview Hex, Eddie tells him that he just figured that the whole Westview situation was just an Avengers training exercise gone wrong. A line that is clearly a fun nod to the very first Iron Man movie when Terrence Howard Rhodey covered up Iron Man's antics by publicly stating that it was all part of an Air Force training exercise. Soon after this, Billy pulls up one of Jennifer Kale's YouTube videos, the third member of the Coven to appear in his life before he even met them. And while this video is playing, we can see an article about reincarnation in past lives that Billy has highlighted in the past, very much showing us that this boy is on the right track towards figuring out who he really is. And not long after this, Billy does the one thing that Saturday morning cartoons told us not to do and meets up with a crazy man from the internet with a boner. But luckily, this boner was Ralph Boner, as played by
this strange man with a boner, but it was Ralph Boner.
Evan Peters, and not Jeffrey Dahmer, as played by Evan Peters, which is what would probably happen in real life. And boy, have these past 3 years not been kind for this flaccid boner, as he's become increasingly paranoid towards everything after dealing with both supernatural witches and the super assholes over at SWORD. And I especially enjoyed how this entire scene with Ralph Boner in this parking garage is just one big reference to the Deep Throat scene from 1976's All the President's Men. And Ralph is so much of a boner that he even made himself a little cross out of chicken bones that he put on his hat in a feeble attempt to protect his mind from being possessed again, which is hilarious. Ralph then reluctantly tells the boys what happened to him in WandaVision, and how he held Monica Rambeau hostage and was the one who actually poisoned and killed the Maximoff dog Sparky, all under the control of Agatha Harkness. But most importantly, he tells Billy of Wanda and Vision's two boys, Billy and Tommy Maximoff, with Billy pretty much immediately reacting to the mention of his brother's name in semi-recognition. You can actually hear a couple of notes of the WandaVision theme playing in the background when Ralph mentions being a terrible influence on Wanda and Vision's kids, which was a really nice touch. After this, Ralph reveals that everyone in the world believes Wanda Maximoff to be dead after the events of Multiverse of Madness, and that Vision had been broken down for parts over at SWORD, seemingly not knowing that SWORD reassembled those parts to create White Vision. And after learning
That's so insane.
that this Agatha Harkness lady is just chilling in Westview, Billy then heads back to his bedroom to crank some Lorna Wu in the Coral Shore as he writes down what he's learned about the Maximoff family at his desk. A Lorna Wu poster can actually be seen to the left of his desk, right next to, oh my god, you guessed it, yet another Wizard of Oz reference of a poster. This show cannot get enough Wizard of Oz into its bloodstream. Billy then takes a look at the portion of his wall that he reserved for research on magic sigils. And next to the drawing of his own sigil, we can see that he's written notes regarding two different types of sigils. The note to the right of his sigil explains what permanent sigils are, by stating that they're active for long periods of time and that permanent sigils can be made into art pieces or hidden in other objects, which is exactly what Lilia did with Billy's permanent sigil. He also noted that these sigils can also be recharged to strengthen and revitalize the active energy. And the second type of sigil, explained a little bit further to the left here, is the concept of destructible sigils. Sigils that are apparently activated by being destroyed and can create a burst of energy that gives the sigil power. These sigils are written, carved, or singed into paper, wood, food, or any objects and destroyed by fire or force. Billy then hits the internet and searches for info on Agatha Harkness, using a Google parody of a site called Lookie to eventually find a Reddit parody of a site called Dreadit, which has a forum post asking if any witches from the Salem witch trials are still alive today. A user named 4th Level Warlock mentions the Salems of Evnora Harkness's coven, as well as the children of the coven that would one day form the dreaded and creepy Salem 7. But in reply to that comment, a user named Sam Samwich would post an old-ass picture of Agatha, leading Billy to run a reverse image search of that picture to find that Agatha was actually one of the survivors of the sinking of the Titanic on April 15, 1912. Billy then follows these digital breadcrumbs to find this article from the Bella Cross Daily Tribune that details the Hindenburg Zeppelin disaster of May 6, 1937, loosely implying that Agatha may have caused the crash herself. We then see an article from October 14, 2007, implying that Agatha was the Jolene woman Dolly Parton was worried about losing her man to in her 1973 hit song Jolene. In the comments of that article, Billy then finds a link to a site called Brujapedia, with bruja being the Spanish word for witch. And while searching this index of witches that begin with the letter A, we can see that this site believes that First Lady Abigail Adams, the wife of 2nd U.S. President John Adams, to have been a witch, which would be quite the revelation if true. And clicking on Agatha's article, we learn that, prior to the events of WandaVision, the last time Agatha was spotted was in Nashville, Tennessee in 1973, which is quite intriguing. And under that, we can see some Agatha Harkness fun facts, including how she ended her entire coven, possesses the power to absorb life forces like a succubus, has the nickname Witch Killer, and is the only known survivor of the Witch's Road. And the mention of the Witch's Road here then inspires Billy to seek the Witch's Road for himself in an attempt to discover if he truly is connected to this mysterious missing Billy Maximoff. Billy then immediately drives his ass to Westview, stopping his car in front of the Maximoff lot before looking up how to perform a release spell in his handy-dandy notebook. He then picks up his phone to text his boo-boo Eddie, who tells Billy that he's his black heart emoji, a possible nod to the mystery of the black heart that Lilia added to the list of those in Agatha's coven back in episode 2, implying that Lilia's black heart was supposed to be a placeholder for Billy the entire time. Billy then breaks into Agatha's house just like we saw him do in episode 1. You know, while Agatha looks like she's talking to herself like a crazy person when she's actually having pizza and a beer with Rio in her head. and looking for a personal item to help free Agatha from her spell, he heads up to the attic and finds Agatha's brooch, but is soon chased by Agatha after he accidentally knocks over her lamp. But luckily, it's Mrs. Davis to the rescue to give Agatha the much-needed assist in apprehending her mysterious perp. And while interrogating Billy, we can see that Agatha is hilariously wearing one of her former fake husband's shirts that says Boner Family Reunion, Pitch a Tent, very much hilariously leaning into the sexual innuendo of the Boner name. You know, much like Ralph Boner's screen name, Bonerific69. Agatha then tells Billy to identify the corpse from her crime scene photos, but Billy simply tells her that she's showing him pictures of daisies.
Traveling has always been our passion, even with his Parkinson's.
A nice play on the phrase pushing daisies, a phrase meant to hint that someone is dead. Then, after Billy starts chanting the release spell, Agatha throws him in the closet until she's released. And after a quick time skip, we are brought to the moment in episode 2 when Agatha finally asks Billy his name, to which Billy confidently replies Billy Maximoff for the first time in his life. Then we're finally brought back to the Witch's Road in the moments directly after Billy Maximoff put on the crown and made the other witches see brown. We see Agatha crawling her way out of said brown by using a nearby root to pull herself out of the mud, reminiscent to how Carrie's hand emerged from her grave at the very end of 1976's Carrie. Billy then destroys the tile holding the sigil, allowing all the witches with a heartbeat to finally hear his name. Agatha then tells Billy that it's nice to see him again, with the last time they actually met, of course, being when she kidnapped both him and his brother Tommy during the events of WandaVision. But she said this after telling Billy that both he and his mother Wanda apparently have the same tell, without elaborating on what that tell is. But if I had to guess, Agatha is likely talking about the weird finger movements that Wanda tends to do while she's casting her spells, something that we saw Billy do at the very end of the last episode when he was using his powers. Agatha then congratulates Billy on breaking the rules and doing exactly what he had to do to survive, projecting her own selfish viewpoints on Billy, almost like she's trying to excuse her own selfish nature that led her to absorb countless life forces with the Darkhold all her life. And finally, after a little prying, Agatha discovers that Billy's main motivation for going on the Witch's Road is to find his brother Tommy, something that Billy can't really do without Agatha's help, as much as he doesn't really want to admit it, because this boy cannot use his powers anymore for some reason. But before they head off to the next trial, Billy makes sure to let Agatha know that he doesn't trust her at all anymore after what she did to...
Dang, bro. This is a lot. This is a long video. I'm so sorry, but I didn't expect it to be this long. But we gotta finish it.
And Agatha seems to react to that in a very interesting way, seemingly trying to hide that Billy's newfound disdain for her actually hurts her a little bit. But regardless of their tumultuous relationship, off those two witches go down the Yellow Leaf Road to their next life-threatening trial, and I cannot wait to see what's in store for them next week in episode 7. However, before I go, speaking of the Witch's Road, y'all want to see something cool? You know how each area of the Witch's Road is themed after a different color? Well, it's looking like the order these colors appear on the road match the order the Infinity Stones appeared in the MCU. Like, for example, the first part of the road was blue, right? And that's because we were first introduced to the Tesseract in 2011's Captain America 1. Then the next area with Trial 2 was themed red, which is the same color as the Ether, which was the next Infinity Stone that we saw in 2013's Thor 2. And after this, we have the purple area, representative of the orb introduced in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. And now we're in the yellow area, as the Mind Stone will not be exposed by Ultron until 2015's Age of Ultron. So if this pattern stays true, the next trial after this should be themed green, because we were introduced to the Green Time Stone in 2016's Doctor Strange 1, and this will likely be followed by an orange section to point to the Soul Stone introduced in 2018's Infinity War. I mean, I know I always say it, but the entire MCU really is completely rooted in these Infinity Stone energies, man. It's a pretty cool shit. But yeah, that is it for this breakdown of episode 6 of Agatha.
Okay, guys, that was it. Peace. I'm out. But follow them so you can see